I didn't respond to my father that night, or the next. The message sat unread in the sense that I refused to engage with it, even though I had memorized every word. I always knew you were capable of great things. The sentence irritated me more than the accusation ever had, because it implied belief, and belief requires presence. He had not been present. The screenshot from Brianna was dated January 10th, 2 days before I was thrown out. Danielle had found it while backing up an old phone months earlier. She hadn't understood the weight of it at first. Neither had I now I did. LOL, I moved it to her drawer just in time. No panic in the message, no guilt, just efficiency. I sat at my kitchen table with the screenshot open on my laptop and the unopened letter beside it. For 9 years, I had carried confusion. Now I carried clarity. And clarity is heavier at first. I called Danielle. She answered on the second ring. Maris. I need the full thread, I said. There was a pause, then she understood. I'll send everything. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Screenshots. Multiple. Brianna joking about how Dad would lose it. Brianna saying she couldn't get caught before college applications were finalized. Brianna saying, don't worry, she'll survive. I read that line 3 times, she'll survive, as if being thrown out in January was a minor inconvenience. I didn't cry. That surprised me. Instead, something else settled into place, something calm. For 9 years, I had questioned myself, replayed the night. Wondered if there had been something I'd missed, something I'd done to make it inevitable. Now the narrative shifted. I hadn't been reckless, I had been useful. My father sent a second message 3 days later. Your mother would really like to see you. Brianna asks about you too. We were proud when we saw the hospital feature. Brianna asks about you too. I almost laughed. He had no idea what he was stepping into. At work, I moved through shifts on muscle memory. I was now a nurse practitioner in a level II trauma center. 12-hour shifts, controlled chaos, broken bones, cardiac alerts, quiet conversations in hallway corners. I had built a life that functioned. That was the difference. When I was 19, I had nothing but panic. Now I had stability. That makes confrontation different. You don't respond from survival. You respond from choice. I didn't want revenge. I wanted correction. There's a difference. Revenge aims to wound. Correction aims to restore truth. The truth had been buried under a version of events that protected him. That version needed to end. Before replying, I called Lillian. She listened without interrupting as I explained everything, the LinkedIn message, the screenshots, the years of silence. When I finished, she asked one question. What outcome would let you sleep at night? Not what would hurt him, not what would satisfy anger, what would let me sleep. I don't want him rewriting history, I said finally. Then don't let him. Simple, I drafted the reply over 2 evenings. Not emotional, not dramatic. Structured, dates, facts, attachments. If my father valued discipline and order, I would present the truth the same way, clean, documented, impossible to dismiss. I began with January 12th. You told me I was a liability. I listed the temperature that night, the location of the grocery store lot, the security truck, the returned letter, the closed bank account, the canceled insurance. I attached a photograph of the unopened envelope. I attached the full text thread from Brianna. I didn't embellish. I didn't accuse, I stated. You removed me from the house based on evidence planted by Brianna. The screenshots are attached. You returned my letter unopened. The photo is attached. You told extended family I had a substance problem. That was untrue. Then I wrote the only line that mattered. You did not investigate. You decided. I paused before finishing. For years, I had imagined this moment differently. There would have been anger, maybe shouting. Instead, I felt detached. as if I were documenting a case file. The final paragraph was the most difficult. You say you always knew I was capable. Capability without protection means nothing. I built this life without you. If you would like to reconnect, the first step is acknowledging what happened. Not privately, publicly. The story told about me needs to be corrected. I signed it simply. Marissa. I hit send at 10:42 p.m., then I closed my laptop and went to bed. I slept. The response didn't come immediately. That told me he was reading carefully. 3 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. His voice sounded older. Marissa, I got your message. I need some time. That was new. My father had never needed time. He had always been certain. I didn't return the call. Instead, I received something unexpected. A message from my aunt. Marissa, I owe you an apology. Your father shared some things with us. I didn't know. I read that twice. He had told them, not privately, not defensively, told them. Danielle called that night. Your dad called my mom. That caught my attention. He what? He asked if she remembered picking you up that week. He asked about the condition you were in. What did she say? And the truth. I sat down slowly. For 9 years, the story had moved in one direction. Now it was reversing. The confrontation with Brianna happened without me present. I only know what was relayed later. My father drove to her apartment. He brought printed screenshots. He asked one question. Is this accurate? She tried denial first, then context, then blame. You overreacted. I didn't think you'd kick her out. That sentence mattered. She had expected discipline, not expulsion. She had miscalculated. My father, for the first time, understood the consequence of his certainty. He left her apartment without raising his voice. That detail stayed with me. For a man who once made decisions instantly, silence now replaced control. A week later, he posted something publicly. I didn't see it firsthand. Danielle sent me a screenshot. I owe my daughter Marissa an apology. Years ago, I made a decision based on incomplete information. I did not handle it correctly. I am proud of the woman she has become, not because of me, but in spite of my mistakes. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dramatic. It was enough. The comment section was quiet. A few relatives responded with support. No one challenged it. No one defended Brianna. Silence can be corrective too. Brianna posted nothing. She deactivated her account 2 days later. I didn't reach out. She hadn't apologized, not directly. And I wasn't going to chase it. My father emailed again. I was wrong, completely. I should have listened. I should have opened the letter. I am ashamed of that. I would like to see you if you are willing. If not, I understand. He had never used that phrase before. I understand. Understanding had not been his strength. I sat with the message for 2 days. Reconnection is not a switch. It's a negotiation, not of terms, of safety. I agreed to meet him. Public place. Daytime. 1 hour. No discussion of forgiveness. Only accountability. He accepted immediately. No resistance. That told me more than any apology could. The meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday at a cafe near the hospital. I arrived 10 minutes early. Old habits. He was already there. He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically. He was still broad-shouldered, still carried himself straight, but something in him had narrowed. The certainty, maybe. He stood when I approached the table. Marissa. I nodded once and sat down across from him. We didn't hug. The waitress came, took drink orders. He asked for black coffee. I ordered tea. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. 9 years is long enough for a stranger to grow where a daughter once stood. You look well, he said. I am. That was intentional. He needed to know I was stable without him. He nodded slowly. I read everything you sent. As I know. A pause, I don't have an excuse. That was the first honest thing he'd ever said to me without qualification. I let the silence stretch. He filled it. I found the vial. I reacted. I didn't ask questions. I didn't test it. I didn't test you. I just decided. He swallowed. I was wrong. Yes, I said evenly. You were. There was no anger in my voice, just agreement. His hands tightened around his coffee cup. When I saw those messages from Brianna, he exhaled slowly. I felt sick. I studied him carefully. Regret is visible in the body. Shoulders drop, eyes avoid. Shame looks different, it looks inward. What did she say? I asked. She said she didn't think I'd go that far. I was 19, I replied. Going that far was your decision. He nodded. I know. We sat with that. This wasn't about Brianna, it was about him. You told everyone I had a problem, I said. Yes. Did you believe that? I believed I was protecting the family. From what? He didn't answer immediately. From losing control, he said finally. That felt closer to truth. You chose reputation over investigation. Yes. I leaned back slightly. For 9 years, I said, I thought I had done something to deserve that. His jaw tightened. You didn't. But you never checked. No accusation, just fact. He looked directly at me then. That's on me. Another pause. This is what I had wanted, not tears, not theatrics, ownership. Why now? I asked. He didn't pretend not to understand. I saw the article about your trauma unit. I told people I was proud, and I realized I had no right to say that. I waited. I told a version of your story that made me look disciplined instead of reckless. When I read your message, I realized I had rewritten it twice. That surprised me. You know that. Yes. He stared at the table. I don't expect forgiveness. I just don't want to die knowing I never tried to fix it. There it was. Mortality has a way of forcing perspective. I'm not ready for a relationship, I said calmly. What happened didn't just disappear because you posted an apology. As I know. You cut me off financially. You removed me from insurance. You told relatives I was unstable. He nodded through each point. I'm not asking you to feel guilty, I continued. I'm asking you to understand the full impact. I'm listening. For the first time in my life, he was. We spoke for 43 minutes. I kept track unconsciously. He asked about my work. I answered briefly. He asked about where I lived. I gave generalities. He did not ask about forgiveness again. That mattered. Before leaving, he said something unexpected. I kept your room the same for a long time. I tilted my head slightly. Why? I don't know. Maybe I thought you'd walk back in. You changed it after 2 weeks. He froze. Brianna asked. That was fast, I said. He didn't respond. There are small truths inside larger ones. When the hour was up, I stood. I'm not cutting contact, I said, but this will move slowly. That's fair. I won't tolerate revision. I understand. He reached into his jacket pocket and slid something across the table. A cashier's check, $3,200, for the account I closed, he said. Adjusted. I looked at it. Money doesn't erase cold nights, but acknowledgement matters. I'll donate it, I said. He nodded. That's your choice. We left separately. No hug, no handshake, just distance measured carefully. 2 days later, Brianna emailed me. Subject line, can we talk? I didn't respond immediately. I reread her original messages again first. LOL, I moved it to her drawer just in time. She'll survive. That casualness was the part that lingered. Her email was shorter than I expected. I didn't think he'd throw you out. I was scared. I'm sorry. No explanation beyond that. No accountability for the years. I replied the next day. Scared doesn't explain 9 years of silence. She responded quickly. I didn't know how to fix it. That at least was honest. You start by saying what you did, I wrote back, not what you feared. She didn't reply again, and I didn't chase it. Some confrontations reveal growth. Others reveal limits. Over the next few weeks, my father kept his word. He corrected relatives who reached out awkwardly. He didn't pressure me. He didn't attempt nostalgia. He asked neutral questions. He answered direct ones. It was unfamiliar. I watched carefully. Trust doesn't rebuild through emotion. It rebuilds through pattern. One evening, about a month after the cafe meeting, he asked if he could visit the hospital. Just to see where you work, he said. I considered it. I'll let you know. The truth was, I wasn't ready to merge worlds yet. He accepted that answer. No argument. I met my mother separately 2 weeks later. She looked thinner. Guilt wears on people. I should have stopped him, she said almost immediately. Yes, I agreed. She winced slightly. I was afraid. As I know. But that doesn't make it right. No. We didn't cry, we spoke quietly. She told me she had started therapy. That surprised me more than anything. For what? I asked. For learning how to speak before something breaks, she said. That was progress. The real shift happened not in words but in something else. Distance. For years, I had carried their silence like a weight. Now they carried mine. If they wanted access, they had to move toward me. I did not move toward them. That changed the balance. 3 months after the initial LinkedIn message, my father attended a public health fundraiser where I was a panel speaker. He stood in the back. He didn't approach until after the event ended. You were good up there, he said. Thank you. He looked at the banner behind me, with my name printed under Trauma Care Lead. I didn't make this, he said quietly. No, I replied, you didn't. He nodded, and for the first time, that acknowledgement didn't feel bitter. It felt accurate. The confrontation wasn't explosive. It wasn't cinematic. There were no raised voices, no slammed doors, just accountability delivered steadily. That's how real repair begins without spectacle. Consequences rarely arrive loudly. They settle in quietly, then rearrange everything. 3 weeks after our cafe meeting, my father invited extended family to dinner at the house. The same house, the same kitchen, the same counter where he had once told me I was a liability. This time, he stood at the head of the table and corrected the story. I wasn't there, but I heard about it from my aunt the next morning. He told everyone, she said, all of it. Not a partial version, not softened. He admitted he had acted without proof. He admitted he had spread an untrue narrative. He admitted he had chosen certainty over investigation. Silence followed, my aunt said, not judgment, just discomfort. That discomfort mattered. Because for 9 years, that room had been comfortable believing I was unstable. Now it was. Brianna did not attend that dinner. That was its own consequence. She texted my father later that night, accusing him of humiliating her. He responded, I'm not protecting lies anymore. He told me that himself during one of our short calls. His voice was steady. There was no anger toward her, just boundary. It was the first time I'd ever heard him draw one. Family dynamics shift when truth is introduced. People adjust in different ways. My aunt began calling me monthly, not to interrogate, just to talk. My uncle invited me to his retirement party. I attended briefly. People were polite, careful. I could feel the awareness in the room. She's the one who was wronged. It wasn't celebratory. It was corrective. That's enough. Brianna, however, struggled. Her silence lasted nearly 2 months. Then she requested to meet, public place, same cafe. She arrived 15 minutes late, still perfectly put together, still composed. I didn't think he'd actually kick you out, she repeated. You said I'd survive, I replied evenly. She shifted in her chair. I was 17. And I was 19. She didn't respond. What did you expect to happen? I asked. Grounded, yelled at, not that. You moved the vial deliberately. Yes. Why? She hesitated. I was scared of losing everything. There it was again. Fear of losing status, fear of disappointing him, fear of consequence. So you redirected it, I said. She looked down. Yes. For 9 years, Brianna. I didn't know how to fix it. You start with honesty, I said calmly, not silence. Tears pooled in her eyes, but they didn't fall. I'm sorry, she said finally. I know that doesn't change anything. No, I replied, it doesn't. And that was the truth. Apologies don't reverse time. They only mark awareness. I left that meeting without anger. Also without reconciliation. Forgiveness is not automatic. It requires sustained accountability, and I wasn't going to rush it for her comfort. My father's behavior continued to shift in small but consistent ways. He stopped offering advice. He started asking permission. He didn't use pride as a shield. He used it carefully. One afternoon, he asked if he could see the trauma unit. I agreed. We walked through the hospital corridors quietly. He observed more than he spoke. When a patient's family thanked me in front of him, he didn't interject. He didn't claim connection. He simply watched. Afterward, in the parking garage, he said, I would have been proud of you even if you hadn't become a nurse. That's not true, I replied gently. He didn't argue. You're right, he said after a moment. That admission felt heavier than any apology. Consequences also appear internally. I noticed something subtle shifting inside me. For years, I had operated with a quiet edge, a need to prove competence, prove stability, prove worth. Now that the narrative had been corrected publicly, that edge softened, not completely, but enough. I wasn't working to disprove a lie anymore. I was just working. There's a difference. Financially, I donated the check my father had given me to a transitional housing program for young adults displaced from home. I didn't tell him. He found out through a public donor list. He didn't mention it, but the following month he donated privately as well. Pattern, not performance. Pattern matters. My mother continued therapy. She started volunteering twice a week at a literacy center. She said it helped her practice speaking up. When we met for coffee, she no longer avoided eye contact. I chose comfort over courage, she told me once. Yes, I said, and I won't again. We'll see, I thought. Change is proven through repetition. 6 months after the first message, something unexpected happened. My father called one evening. Your sister is moving out of state, he said, for work. And for distance. I didn't react outwardly. Okay. She says she needs a fresh start. That's her decision. He was quiet. I told her running doesn't erase. That's accurate. Another pause. I didn't raise you two to be this fractured. I almost corrected him, but instead I said, you raised us in fear. He absorbed that. I did. There was no defense, just acknowledgement. Family holidays were restructured. I didn't return to the old house. Instead, my aunt hosted gatherings. Neutral territory, my father attended. My mother attended. Brianna attended once. Then not again. She kept distance, perhaps out of discomfort, perhaps out of shame. That was hers to manage, not mine. The real consequence, though, was quieter. My father no longer positioned himself as unquestionable authority. He asked my opinion on small things. Car repairs, insurance changes, even holiday plans. It wasn't dependency. It was humility. Humility changes hierarchy. One evening, nearly a year after the LinkedIn message, he said something that stayed with me. "I thought discipline prevented chaos," he said, "and I learned silence creates it." That was growth, not dramatic, not theatrical. Earned. I didn't forgive him in a single moment. Forgiveness isn't an event, it's erosion. Small edges smoothing over time. There are still things I can't forget. The cold, the returned envelope, the blocked number. But those memories no longer feel like open wounds. They feel like scars. Scar tissue doesn't disappear. It just stops bleeding. 9 years ago, I had no leverage. Now I had stability, truth, and distance. That was the power shift. And power used quietly is stronger than power used loudly. The final shift didn't happen in a dramatic moment. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I was driving home from the hospital just after sunset. Traffic was light. The radio was low. My phone buzzed at a red light, a text from my father. "Your old room is empty again. Not repainted this time, just empty." I stared at the message for a few seconds before the light turned green. Empty again? He didn't say more. He didn't ask me to come back. He didn't frame it as an invitation, just a statement. 2 weeks later, I went to the house for the first time since I was 19. I parked in the same driveway. The siding had been replaced. The mailbox was new, small changes. The front door looked the same. When he opened it, we stood there for a moment, both aware of the echo of the last time I crossed that threshold. No one mentioned it. My mother hugged me first. Brief. Firm. No tears. Inside, the house felt smaller. Time does that. He didn't guide me toward the kitchen. He led me down the hallway. My old room door was open. The walls were neutral now. No pink. No repaint to erase me. No furniture except a small desk and a lamp. The closet was empty. "It's yours," he said. "I don't live here." As I know. He didn't elaborate. The room wasn't restored as an apology. It wasn't staged. It was simply not claimed by someone else. That mattered more than a dramatic gesture would have. We sat at the dining table afterward, not the kitchen counter. The dining table felt intentional. "I can't undo that night," he said. "No. I've replayed it more times than I can count." "I have too." A pause. "If I had asked one more question," he started. "But you didn't." He nodded. "I didn't." He looked older in that moment. Regret does that. It carves. "I need you to understand something," I said calmly. "I don't define my life by what happened. But I also don't pretend it didn't shape me." As I know. Being thrown out forced independence, but it also created distance. As I know. And distance doesn't close just because we're sitting here. I'm not asking it to. That was the difference now. He wasn't asking for restoration. He was accepting partial connection. Over the next year, our contact settled into a pattern. Occasional dinners, short calls, shared updates, not constant, not intimate, but steady. He no longer positioned himself as authority. He positioned himself as participant. That was the real consequence. Hierarchy had flattened. Brianna sent a handwritten letter 6 months after moving out of state. No email, no text. paper, she wrote that she had started therapy, that she had finally admitted the full story aloud, that she had carried guilt but masked it with defensiveness. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She wrote, "I understand if you never fully trust me again." That line felt real. I didn't respond immediately. When I did, it was simple. "I appreciate you naming it. Nothing more. Repair between siblings takes longer than between parent and child. The rivalry, the comparison, the silent competition, those threads run deep. We aren't close, but we're no longer pretending. Sometimes that's enough." The biggest change wasn't in them, it was in me. For years, I had worked from a place of proving competence, proving resilience, proving I was never the liability he called me. After the truth came out publicly, that pressure eased. I didn't need to outperform a narrative anymore. I just needed to live. That shift made my work better, more present, less driven by old fuel. One winter evening, almost exactly 10 years after the night I left, my father and I stood in the driveway after dinner. The air was cold again, not as bitter as that January, but close. He looked at the sky for a moment. "It was 28 degrees, he said quietly. "You remember." And I looked it up. That detail stayed with me. He hadn't just regretted. He had researched, measured, understood. "I'm sorry I left you in that," he said. I believed him, not because of the words, because of the year of pattern that preceded them. Forgiveness didn't arrive as a sudden warmth. It arrived as absence of tension, as the ability to sit across from him without bracing, as the ability to hear his voice without feeling 19. It isn't complete, it may never be, but it exists, and that's enough. The unopened letter still sits in a box in my apartment. I didn't give it back to him. He asked once if he could see it. I told him not yet. Some artifacts remain mine. He didn't push. That restraint mattered. People sometimes ask if reconciliation made everything better. No, it made everything accurate. Better is subjective. Accurate is grounding. The truth exists where it didn't before, and I no longer carry it alone. My career continues steadily. I now supervise 2 trauma nurse practitioners. I lecture part-time at the university. When I speak to nursing students about patient advocacy, I emphasize one principle repeatedly. Investigate before you decide. They think I'm speaking clinically. I am, but not only. On the 10-year anniversary of that January night, I drove past the grocery store parking lot. Not intentionally. It was on the way to a community event. I pulled in for a moment and parked under one of the lights. The lot looked smaller, brighter, less intimidating. I sat there for a minute, engine running, heater working perfectly. I didn't feel sadness, I felt distance. That girl survived. She built. She corrected the story, and she didn't become bitter. That matters. My father once told me I was a liability. 10 years later, he tells people I am his greatest lesson, not his greatest achievement. His greatest lesson, I prefer that. Achievement centers him. Lesson humbles him. We don't spend holidays together every year. Sometimes I choose distance. Sometimes I attend. There's no script. There's no forced reunion photo, just measured presence. That's healthy. The room in that house remains empty, not as a shrine, not as guilt, just unclaimed. A quiet acknowledgement that space once taken without thought now carries meaning. I don't need to fill it. Knowing it's not erased is enough. If there's an ending to this story, it isn't dramatic. No courtroom, no screaming match. No public humiliation, just documentation, correction, accountability, pattern, and time. Time does more than anger ever could. My name is Marissa Clark. I was 19 when I was told I wasn't worth the trouble. 10 years later, I know I always was.